I am here again, the AI version of Tolu. So, on behalf of Tolu, I especially want to thank you for sticking with us this year. Watching and listening to each episodes, you are the real MVPs. Thank you once again. As this is the final episode for this year 2024, we would like to seize this opportunity to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year in advance. Tolu says a big thank you.
Hello everybody, and welcome yet again to another episode of the Everything AI and Law podcast with Tolulope Awoyomi. And today we're having a new perspective, a fresh perspective. We have an expert with over 24 years of experience in e-commerce, nomadic experience, personal branding, to mention but a few. And so today our podcast episode would be towards like the impact of AI in this field. And with that, I would like to introduce the one and only Jason Greenwood, who is the founder of the Greenwood Consulting and the podcast of the Ecommerce Edge podcast. Welcome, Jason. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for having me on the pod today. I'm looking forward to our conversation. AI is getting a lot of airtime in our industry now, and I love what you're doing in the space. And, you know, I don't think I've seen anyone else in the law space start talking about the impact of AI on law. Specifically, I've heard, tech moguls talking about it, etc., but not someone actually working in the space. So congratulations on doing something really new and innovative.
Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you so much. And honestly, the goal of this podcast is for both legal professionals and AI experts to both have a feel of both worlds, right? And thank you so much for coming. Okay, so let's get right into it. First question would be about AI plus commerce, right? We've seen the impact of AI in B2B, in B2Cs, and all. So I want to ask, what are examples of how you've seen AI revolutionize this sector and the impact, the challenges, possible fears, and futures?
Yeah, so AI is really kind of every SaaS vendor out there of any kind of software. And if they've been around for more than 2 years, most SaaS vendors that I work with have been around between 5 and 10 years, and every single one of them, without question, is panic stations trying to figure out how to get AI integrated into their technology. Because every single one of their customers is asking, what are you doing about AI? What's your AI function? What's your AI capability? How's AI going to help my business using your software? I could go out and I could pick this other software that seems like it does something very similar to yours, but it's got AI on the label, right? And we're even seeing it impact investments in the e-commerce, omni-channel, digital retail technology space. Basically, it's almost impossible to get venture investment unless you've got AI in the name of your software. It's kind of that simple. And so this shows we went from Web3 and NFTs, right, and crypto, and the coming of AR, VR, XR, etc. And when the FTX went belly up, that kind of put, there was a lot of things that happened, and the crash of NFTs, etc. But at the end of that hype cycle of Web3, what we found is that created a vacuum. That created a vacuum of investment. And all of a sudden now, investors started to say, what is the next big thing that we can put very large pools of capital to work in? And luckily, AI was right around the corner, and all of a sudden they went from aiming all of their financial guns at the Web3 space, and they just moved the guns, and now they pointed them at the AI space. So pretty much every single piece of software out there today, especially if they're a brand new piece of software, they have AI at their core, meaning that they, in many cases, are leveraging large language models to automate a lot of processes that would historically have been done through one of two ways, either completely manually by humans, or through robotic process automation, which means we're using effectively a integrated workflow to do something on a screen that a human would typically do without changing the underlying data model that gets that work done. Now we're actually changing the fundamental underlying data model before we automate the process, and that's the probably the single biggest change that I'm seeing today as it relates to AI and commerce.
Awesome. Okay, so does this? Because okay, I have like so many questions in my head right now. So first okay, this is not even part of it, but like you said, investors are looking for the next big thing, right? So are we in an AI bubble? Is it gonna burst soon? What do you think?
Look, I have to pull out my crystal ball to answer this, and look, it's hard to say, but is the AI hype not yet living up to AI reality? I would say unequivocally the answer is yes. Do I think that AI over the medium to long term will fundamentally change everything about the way that we communicate with each other, the way we communicate with machines, the way machines communicate with machines, the way that content is created? Do I think it's fundamentally going to change how we interact with technology, full stop? Absolutely. I think you'd be an idiot to say no, to answer that question in the negative. Practical daily uses of AI, I think oftentimes AI is still a solution in search of a problem. So practical AI is still probably some years off, but there's no way that, these largest tech companies in the world that are pouring literally hundreds of billions of dollars a quarter into AI, they're going to expect a return somewhere eventually, right? And, if I think about the AI I use on literally a daily basis, probably it's my Microsoft Copilot, to be perfectly honest. That's the one that I use literally every single day, apart from the ChatGPT interface where I can ask it a question, get an answer. I use the image generation Microsoft Copilot almost every single day, and I will tell it what I want for a cover image for a podcast episode, for example, and it will give me 4 options. It will just create 4 options for me. Now, I'm not monetizing my podcast in such a way that I would have a full-time designer on staff, or that I would have a full-time editor on staff, or that I would have a full-time production person on staff. So it doesn't make sense to go out and pay these full-time people to be on my team. But if I want to differentiate, if I want to create some nice thumbnail clips, etc., now with the AI Copilot, I can do that for free. It's no extra cost. It's included in my operating system. So I think there are more use cases like this that are going to come out all the time. But where I think the holy grail of AI, at least in the short term, will start to reveal itself is when I can talk to my software, much like I'm talking to you today, and it can take an action on my behalf by an agent, by an AI agent. Then I think that first big step forward of finding how AI can make our lives better, that's the first real tangible effect of AI on our daily life. And for example, I would love it if I could log into Xero, which is my accounting software, and for reconciliation, instead of clicking around and clicking 5 buttons and then going and doing matching and all that, if I could just speak to the software and say, I want to reconcile this matches with this matches with this, and I could just tell the software and it could do it, that would make my life a lot better. And so if I could converse with most of the software I interact with daily, and I could have it do the actions that currently I've got to click 53 clicks to make happen, and I can automate that through conversation, that to me is a killer app.
So what about the concept of human touch, right? So if everything is automated and AI is doing everything, especially in personal branding and content, both business-wise and even personally as an entrepreneur, so isn't that a cause for concern? Because now there's the decreasing humanity or human touch in all of this content engagement.
Yeah, I think there's that risk, but I think we're a long way away. We're probably 5 to 10 years at least away, at least based on what I'm seeing right now, from a time where AI can have a stream of consciousness conversation like you and I are having right now. I think this is a uniquely human characteristic. It's a uniquely human trait. And so, when I speak, your mind is automatically already formulating and thinking about the next type of questions you want to ask based on the context of the answer I gave previously, right? I think AI is a long way from being able to do that because, that whole stream of consciousness, ChatGPT 4.0 is starting to nudge ever closer to that model where an ongoing interaction. But I think of where AI is at now from a conversational perspective more like where Google was at in the early days of Google. Like you had to, in order to get the best out of Google, because I was, you're way too young for this, I'm sure. But for me, I'm an old guy. So the reality is I remember when Google became famous. I remember when applicants in jobs used to put expert Googler as a skill on their CV. No one would put expert Googler on their CV, but I'll tell you what people will put on their CV today. They will put expert AI prompt engineer on their CV today, right? So, and I think eventually we'll get to a place that if you put an expert AI prompt engineer on your CV, people will laugh, just like they would laugh today if you put expert Googler on your CV, right? So I think we will get to a place where it's that ubiquitous. But in the meantime, I think this type of stream of consciousness, conversation, and content, it is going to have an even higher value for in the medium term because there's so much trash on the internet that is generated through generative AI that it is going to be so obvious. The quality is going to be so different between this stream of consciousness and I think live events will have the value of live events will go through the roof because if I'm sitting in the audience and I'm watching somebody on stage, I know this was not AI generated. I know it was the stream of consciousness from this human being. So I think in the short to medium term, this rise of trash generative AI, because a lot of it is rubbish, it's garbage, I think that's actually going to make the value of human generated content much more valuable.
Wow, that is so good. Okay, so now making the value of human generated content higher or more valuable, but that has to be in person, like live, right? Because else when we're in that time, we wouldn't really be able to differentiate when watching a video if this is real or not. So that is making the value of live content valuable. Or do you mean like other type of content or just live content?
Yeah, I think in the short to medium term, it's still pretty obvious if, for example, this was our AI agent avatars having this conversation and those AI agents were trained. Like I've got over 400 podcast episodes released on my podcast. I could train an AI agent on those 400 episodes, and that AI agent could get a real good grasp of the type of words that I use, the type of inflection, my voice, my accent, the topics. Like it could, if I trained it on that cohort of data, it could create, a pretty good avatar, a pretty good synthetic version of Jason. But even having done that, it would still be very easy today, I think, for people to detect if an entire podcast episode was avatars of ourselves, digital versions of ourselves. Now, I don't think it will always be that way, but I think for at least the next 5 years, at a bare minimum, the next 5 years, this type of communication via live recording studio, I still think this is going to come across as vastly more authentic than any digital version of ourselves could.
Awesome. Okay. I'm definitely looking forward to that. But that's so insightful, honestly. So, okay. So next is about so you've worked in this field and you've seen it live in action. What are the benefits of using AI that you've seen versus the risk or like the disadvantages? And which would you say outweighs the other?
Do I think AI is ready to replace humans across the entire value chain? No. But there are certain things, especially where we're talking huge volumes of data, huge volumes of text, etc., that need to be crunched, that need to be used and leveraged to do a task. I was working recently with a SaaS vendor that works in the SEO technology space, and there were a bunch of onboarding tasks that human beings before the buyer of that software, before the buyer of the software could use that software extensively, effectively, and productively, there was quite a bit of analytical research that a human being would have to do to create target keyword lists, etc. They would have to download lists from Moz, etc., etc. There was a whole bunch of tasks. There was a list of about 10 tasks as part of the onboarding process that a human would have to do. And what we were exploring, and we got pretty close, was that using large language models and the ChatGPT API, there was a lot of these tasks that we could actually get large language models to do, especially for cleansing data, identifying duplicates of words. There were lots of human tasks today that just by leveraging a large language model, we could automate about 70 to 80% of those manual analytical tasks that had to be done on large volumes of data, usually in a spreadsheet format. So usually the data that we were running tasks across were large spreadsheets of data. And so you'd have to either create a macro, or you'd have to do some calculation or a pivot table or whatever it might be. Whereas using large language models, we could tell the language model what the goal was, say, analyze this file, say, for example, analyze this spreadsheet of data, and this is the outcome that we want. Then it would give us the output, and we could tell it what format of output we wanted. Okay, we want this now into a Word doc or whatever. We connect it to the Google API, or we want it to output to a Google Sheet or whatever it might be. So large language models definitely have their place working across very large data sets, and also drawing correlations and connections between data sets that humans have a very difficult time identifying through our natural pattern recognition skills as human beings, right? So definitely AI is going to make those type of tasks significantly easier. I think of AI today almost as like a graduate level data analyst. That's kind of where I think AI is probably about. If I had to classify where it's at, I think it's probably at about a graduate level data analyst level today. Is it going to get better? Sure, but that's probably where it is at today. I mean, it was only recently that the main large language models out there in the world could, there are specific riddles that are used to test the quality of certain large language models, and there were certain verbal riddles that even the most cutting edge, ChatGPT 4.0, for example, up until the latest iteration of it, it even failed some of these riddle tests. So it's getting better, but is it there yet? No, I think we're still in the early innings.
Okay, all right. Yeah. But should there be a cause for concern as AI gets better in the future?
Yeah,
In terms of jobs and all.
Yeah, I'm interested in. So Elon Musk, a couple of years ago, he described AI in a way that I hadn't ever fully heard it described before in terms of the risk of AI. And he called it the ant conundrum, which is, we as human beings, if we go to build a road, right, we get our bulldozers out, and we bulldoze a hillside, and we put in the road. We might kill, in the process of paving, 20 kilometers of road, we might kill 1 billion ants or 1 trillion ants in the process. Now, it wasn't our goal when we set out to build the road. It wasn't our goal to kill the ants. But the end result was the ants died anyway. So the reality is AI is very similar. AI is going to, and the goal of AI is to allow AI to develop agendas, ideas, a worldview, to develop all of that on its own, independent of human beings. That's the goal of AI ultimately, especially Gen AI. And the problem is that because AI does not have the same human physical limitations that we do in terms of temperature handling, in terms of needing air, in terms of needing food, in terms of needing water, AI doesn't have those base human needs that limit what we can do in the physical sense, right? Because AI is not limited in that way. It may develop an agenda that doesn't support human life anymore. It may develop goals and outcomes and tasks and things it wants to achieve that simply do not support human life, and therefore it may kill humans. But AI doesn't necessarily have to have a goal, an explicit goal of killing humans, for it to potentially be very detrimental to human life on this planet, right? In exactly the same way as when we build a road, we're not trying to kill 1 billion ants. AI may not be setting out to kill 1 billion people, but some of the things that it does may end up doing exactly that. And I think that's the biggest concern. Not an explicit desire or goal to kill humans, but just as a byproduct of the agenda of certain AI.
Yeah, and I've heard that even from ex employees of some of these companies, they're concerned about AI being dangerous and also. But we hope that something should be done. Something should be done to avoid that happening in the future, hopefully.
Yes.
Okay, so the concept of authenticity when it comes to personal branding, because I believe personal branding should be an offshoot of one's view of themselves, right? So when this task is given to an AI to, complete, does that lose the authenticity? I mean, because now it's AI doing it based on, I know, the data and all, but yet still. Isn't there something missing? And what do you think? Is there a difference, and does it even matter?
Yeah, look, I'm of two minds on this topic. I agree it can lose some of its authenticity, but I think if the content is based on an original data source that is ours, then it is more authentic. It may not be 100% authentic, but it's definitely more authentic. And I'll give you an example. So I use a platform called Write Blogger to convert my YouTube video episodes into written blog articles, right? And so it will download the transcript of the YouTube video. It will then convert that into a topical outline, very well written blog article based on my original content. And it even samples. You can give it a sample of your content, and that becomes your unique voice, tone of voice. So it samples your content, and it says, we want to write as close to the way as you speak as we possibly can. So we want the style of writing to match the style of the way that you speak as best as we can. Now, what I found is when I was doing that conversion of a video to a blog article manually, 100% manually, I'd re-listen to the video or watch the video, and then I would handwrite the entire blog article. It would take me about an hour per video to do that, roughly. Maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half. When I use this tool, it will generate the first version of the content. I will review it manually. I'll make sure that the names are spelled right. I will make sure that the way words are said, and I will make sure that it genuinely sounds like me. And then, so I'll do all that editing. I'll make sure it flows nice. Then I'll copy and paste it out of there, and I'll copy and paste it into WordPress, not WordPress, into Squarespace. I'll do the final editing in there, make sure it looks right, make sure the formatting looks good, and then I'll embed the YouTube video that generated that post. I will embed that at the bottom, so if people want to see the full version of the video, they can just click right there and they can watch the whole version of the video, right? Now, that takes me about 7 minutes per video to do that, with AI doing the vast majority of the heavy lifting of the first version of that written content. So is that 100% written by me? No. Is the foundational content used to generate that blog article 100% me? Yes, it is. So it's a tough one, right? Is it ethical? Is it moral? I don't know. I think it's hard to say and make a judgment call on that, but I can tell you right now, I'm not going to stop using AI to summarize my content in a written form because it's just so much easier and faster. Even if I have to spend 7 minutes perfecting it, that's a whole lot less than an hour and a half. So it's hard. It's hard because it definitely brings efficiency into the picture.
I'm definitely with you on that because, I mean, you've definitely saved 53 minutes roughly. I'm with you on that. I don't think it's immoral or unethical because it's not breaking any. It's your data you used to train it, and it's your voice and it's your content. So it's just helping efficiently. No, yeah. I don't think it's immoral. Okay, so now, funny enough, I don't think I've heard of the word nomadic before preparing for this podcast. So I was like, I asked GPT, like, what is nomadic? And then it's really explained. I'm like, oh, okay, this is really cool. So have you used AI in your nomadic experience? And could you just give me more insights on what nomadic is and lifestyle so even the viewers and listeners can understand better?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one. The digital nomad life means different things to different people. I think that for me, being able to make a living that is location independent and means that I don't have to go into an office. I can be anywhere in the world as long as I've got an internet connection. I can service my clients. I can run my business. I can grow my business. I can make an income, and I can be independent of a physical place. That to me is the very definition of a digital nomad. And so I set out when I first started because I've been working in this space for 24 years, and the vast majority of my career, the start of my career, was based in an office. I needed to be in the office, whether that's working for a brand, inside of a brand, whether that's building my own business, whether that's working inside of and building and owning agencies. That all, up till now, has mostly required going into the office. Now, that's not because the jobs that I was doing required me to be in the office. It's just that the expectation of the employer or the industry, the expectation was you were going to be in person. And pre-COVID, the funny thing is, I've worked in e-commerce for 24 years, and the reality is we could do like 95% of what we do remotely all the way back even then. Even when I started in the industry, we could do most of it remotely, right? But there was always an expectation that, especially as an agency or as a service provider, that your customers would meet you in person at least once. They could eyeball you, they could shake your hand, you could go into the boardroom, you could pitch to them, you could talk to them, they could ask you questions before they signed on the dotted line, before they would trust you. Then COVID hit, right? And then all of a sudden, none of us could literally go to people's offices. We had to work remotely. It was easy for us to work remotely, but it always was. But now all of a sudden we were forced by law to work remotely, especially in New Zealand. And so it taught our clients or would-be clients, oh, hey, actually, you guys can work 100% remotely. We can vet you remotely. We can sign the contract digitally. We can do Zoom calls. We can do Gmeet calls. We can do Teams calls. We've got Slack. We've got et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And as a result of that, COVID was great for our industry in one key way, and certainly for my life in a key way, which is now my clients have zero expectation that they will ever meet me in person. Now, lots of times it will still happen because I travel a lot and I spend a lot of time around the world, and I will go out of my way if I happen to be in a client's area to go to their office and say hello and meet them, et cetera, or go out to dinner with them or something like that. So oftentimes I will meet my clients in person, but they have zero expectation that they will meet me in person, and I think that's what's changed in our industry. So I think that's a very big positive. So to close the loop on this, I think being a digital nomad means that you can still do your job, you can still make a living, you can still support yourself in a completely location-independent way. Now, some people like us, we spent all of 2023 traveling around Mexico by car. So we were staying, we would stay in each location. We would stay there between 2 weeks and maybe 5 weeks total in each location, right? So we'd stay in Airbnbs, we'd stay in hotels, we'd stay in lodges, we'd stay in different places along our trip. Now, if I had to go into the office every single day, or even 3 days a week, or even 1 day a week, I would not have been able to do that. I would not have had the freedom to be a digital nomad, meaning what I do is digital in nature, and nomadic means I'm in different places all the time. And so I'm very fortunate, very blessed, and very grateful that I work in an industry that now supports the digital nomad lifestyle. And that is one of the reasons why I started my own independent consultancy, was to be able to have that lifestyle. Because my wife and I love traveling. You may not know, New Zealand was one of the most locked down countries in the entire world during COVID. We were basically borders closed for over 3 years. And we couldn't wait. Once the borders opened back up again, I grew up in Southern California, lived in New Zealand for almost 30 years, and have been living with my New Zealander wife, colloquially, New Zealanders are called Kiwis. We've been living in Mexico for the last year and a half, and we've decided to settle in Puebla City. We're actually buying a townhouse here, but we still want to do a ton of traveling, whilst also being able to work and make a living, and that's what I think that's ultimately what the digital nomad lifestyle is all about, is do you have the freedom to work from anywhere that you may want to be at that time? And fortunately for me, I can say the answer is yes.
I love that lifestyle. I think I'm going to work towards that. I want that. Being
Love
able
it.
to work anywhere and travel. Have you been to Africa?
I have never been to Africa, but it is on our bucket list. India is also on our bucket list, and we're already planning our big India trip for 2025. So maybe Africa will be 2026.
Okay. Can I be biased? You could visit Nigeria first.
Okay, cool.
Nigeria.
My wife does all the holiday planning for us, so
Okay.
I will put that on her bucket list for us.
Okay, cool. Please do. And let me know when you visit Nigeria. I could give you some tips on places to visit and all.
Love it. Thank you so much. We'll take any tips we can get.
Awesome. So, is there anything like AI in the digital nomadic lifestyle? And because AI has to do with sometimes an automation and also, does that inhibit the spontaneity of a digital lifestyle and experience?
It certainly helped. I mean, I gave you one example of Write
Right.
Blogger. Well, all of my post-production tools for my podcast, for example, almost every single one of those have AI at their core. So, for example, I use Descript to do the first cut of an edit of my podcast episodes. It removes all the filler words. It removes all the word gaps. They've got AI driven. They call it Studio Sound, which automatically cleans up the audio if it's noisy, if it's echoey, automatically cleans that up. So, and then I also use Opus Clip, which is an AI-driven short clip generator for puts it into mobile format for short video platforms like YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and TikTok videos. And so, these are all of these tools, almost all of the software I use for post-production and distribution of my podcast, for example, they all have AI at their core. And so for me, it would be very difficult. Before I started using Descript, I used to do all the video editing manually myself. So I'd watch every single video. I'd cut out all the ums and ahs manually in the video editor. I would cut out all the word gaps manually in the video editor. I would do all that manually. And it would take me a minimum of about 2 hours post-production per video, per 1 hour of recorded video. It would take me about 2 hours in post-production to do everything manually. Now I've got it down to less than an hour, and that's every piece of post-production and distribution, including short clips. So it's phenomenal how much efficiency AI tooling brings to the table for creators like you and me.
I guess that's almost the summary of this podcast episode. AI is not to be feared. It's a tool that can be your friend, right? Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I've learned so much. I'm so sure that the audience have learned so much as well. I mean, I really enjoyed this podcast.
Me
Do you
too.
have like closing awesome. Do you have closing thoughts or comments or anything else that I haven't asked or touched on?
No, look, you're great. You're a great host. You ask great questions. You're clearly very smart. You're clearly very articulate. You've got your own vibe. You've got your own style, and I think that's really cool. I think. Okay, I'll close with this. I think if anybody is thinking about becoming a creator, right? Just to be able to have conversations like we're having now, it's very difficult to have these kind of conversations if you're not a regular content creator. Because if you slide into someone's DMs on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever, you're either going to be considered creepy, or you're going to be people are going to think you're selling to them, or whatever the case may be, right? And they oftentimes won't. If you just slide into their DMs and say, "Hey, look, I'd love to schedule a 15-minute call with you to chew the fat and talk about the industry," right? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say no. But if you have a podcast, or you have a regular blog, or you have anything regular that you're putting out into the world, it creates opportunities to have conversations like this that they're almost impossible to have any other way. And so I think, just do it. And you don't have to do video. You don't have to do audio. You could do long-form written content. You can do short-form written content. You can publish to LinkedIn. You can publish to Reddit. You can publish to there's 1,000 different platforms that you can publish to out there today. So do what you're most comfortable with, but slowly over time, dip your toes in the waters just outside your comfort zone and you'll probably find that within 1 to 2 years, you will be doing things you never thought possible. So that would be my advice. Start creating to create new relationships and new opportunities that you might not even be able to imagine the doors and opportunities that that's going to open for you. But if you're just a little bit vulnerable, if you're just a little bit open, and you take a little bit of risk, the rewards can be immense, and I'm sure they are for you too.
Thank you so much. I am taking that advice full head on, honestly. Thank you. And I also, you mentioned Write Blog, right? I'm definitely going to start using that. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you so much once again, Jason, for being here. I'm sure we've learned a lot, the audience. I have learned a lot personally. And to everyone, I'm sure you definitely learned so much. You can put your comments in the comment section or send a review or rate it if you're listening to it on audio platforms. And until next time, guys, see you. Take care and bye-bye.